Studies show that 100% of everybody in the world wants to curl up indoors and do nothing because it's so darn cold out there. That's why many people are turning to Bombas, whose pillowy plush slippers and warm merino wool socks have been said to be the most comfortable in the history of feet. Bombas products have been found to boost coziness by up to 1,000,000%. Okay, enough fake statistics, but could Bombas socks and slippers really be the cure? Go to bombas.com/audio and use code AUDIO for 20% off your first purchase. That's BOMBAS.com and use code AUDIO.
Hey, Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I don't know if you've heard, but Mint's premium wireless is $15 a month. But I'd like to offer one other perk. We have no stores. That means no small talk. Crazy weather we're having. No, it's not. It's just weather. It is an introvert's dream. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, $15 per month equivalent required. New customer offer first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Lipkowitz, and this is Sober Awkward.
The kettle's boiled, Vic.
Great. Perfect timing. Just a dash of milk for me, please, mate.
Here you go. Shall we get started then?
Have you ever woken up on a Sunday morning and said, I'm never drinking again, and then found yourself waving $50 at a barman by happy hour?
Are you wondering why everyone else can stop at 1 while you head to a dodgy after-party with a weird bloke called Disco Dave? If so, it might be time to take a deeper look at your relationship with your reliable social crutch, alcohol.
On each episode, we'll investigate our own dysfunctional dealings with booze and find out if it's possible to stop this deeply ingrained habit before things get too messy.
Yep, we're going to open up a shame shed of humiliating drinking stories to help you understand why waking up from a booze coma each weekend with a kebab sticking out of your top pocket might actually be negatively impacting your health.
Hamish and I are here to delve into what it's like being sober, an unwanted warts and all look into why giving up those cheeky pints or putting down those mummy wines will make you feel happier, help your anxiety and mental health, and turn you into the most sparkly, authentic version of you.
Won't that mean I become boring though, Vic?
Well, Hamish, we'll just have to wait and see. I'm Victoria Vanstone.
I'm Hamish Adams-Cairns.
And this is Sober Awkward.
Jeremy Lipkowitz is a meditation teacher, a life coach, a podcaster, a digital habits expert, a former scientist, and an academic. He's also sober and somebody who's not only recovered from a porn addiction, but devotes much of his life to helping others do the same. He's featured in the likes of Men's Health, Thrive Global, and the Good Men Project, and I'm very excited to invite him onto the Sober Awkward podcast today. Hello, Jeremy.
Hello, happy to be here.
I must say, of all the guests I've ever had, your podcast setup, I mean, I can tell you're a podcaster. There is a high-end microphone, the headphones are on point, the background is beautiful. You're very much selling the life of a podcaster in Thailand to me in this moment.
It's not a bad life. I mean, I got to admit, living in Thailand, doing your work remotely, it's a good life. I'm very blessed.
I want to start with what I feel like is an obvious question, which is that why should somebody who is trying to get sober from alcohol listen to a podcast episode about porn addiction?
That's such a good question. You know, at the fundamental level, all addiction, it's really the same. So doesn't really matter the behavior or the substance. It's the same process going on at the root level. And so what you can learn by, exploring and investigating one kind of addiction or one kind of compulsive behavior, you can apply that to anything else. So the things that we talk about on my podcast about porn addiction, sex addiction, social media addiction, or compulsive use of these things, whether or not you want to use the term addiction, they're going to be applicable to people who are dealing with substance use, alcohol, drugs, gambling. The underlying frameworks are still the same and the recovery is the same. You have to kind of apply the same approach in terms of figuring out what's going to help you live a fulfilling life, looking at your addiction at the root level, what's the root cause of it, all of these things.
That is a relief. I was hoping you were going to say that. I felt it was almost a leading question, but yeah, I also share the idea that we sort of can't pigeonhole ourselves by only researching and going deep into one form of addiction. I feel like there are so many similarities and a lot can be learned from looking at it as a more of a sort of a bigger picture subject. So I'm glad we agree on that. Yeah. You describe your addiction to sex and porn beginning at the age of 9 when you would fantasize over comic book characters. And by the time you reached college, it had grown into watching sort of 2 to 3 hours of porn a day. Now that you're out the other side of it and you've obviously done the work and able to look at it, from a healthier place, what do you see as the root of your addiction?
Well, I'll start this off by saying that the root of my addiction will be different from the root of anyone else's addiction. What caused me to reach out to a coping mechanism, an escape mechanism, is going to be different to anyone else's. But fundamentally, what it boils down to is the inability to deal with pain and then using some way of escaping that pain, of numbing the pain early on. So it's a coping mechanism, really. For me, it had to deal with things of loneliness, low self-esteem, being bullied as a kid, not getting my needs met from my parents, all kinds of things that made me want to reach out for some comfort and security. And just over time, it starts small, but just the little ways that we develop these habits that become really locked in terms of our neural pathways, our wiring in our brain, and the ways that we reach out to it in a compulsive or autopilot way. So for me, it was just all the little ways that I was seeking comfort, seeking a sense of control. And porn was the thing that gave it to me. Other people will find it in alcohol or, rock and roll, whatever it is that you kind of use as your outlet. But for me, it was through porn and fantasy and masturbation.
You mentioned loneliness there, and that's something that we'll certainly circle back to, because I know that loneliness and isolation play such an important role both in recovery and in any kind of addiction. Did you experiment with other things to sort of soothe that, whatever you were missing? Did you try drugs? Did you try alcohol? Did you try whatever else was available and then come to, okay, porn is meeting my needs? Or was it just the first one?
Well, I should say it was never a conscious thing of saying, okay, I'm feeling lonely. What can I try to cover this up? It was, when you're 8 years old, 9 years old, you're not really thinking about it. You feel bad in your body, in your mind, and you want to escape that. And when you've done something that feels good, it's like, oh, I don't want to feel bad like this. I want to feel good. Oh, I remember when I touched myself and looked at, Victoria's Secret catalog, it made me feel good. So let me go do more of that. And so it's a very subconscious, unconscious thing that develops. So it wasn't like, I sat down with a brainstorm and a game plan and said, okay, what's going to give me the best bang for my buck here? I will say that, in that regard, I experimented with many things. I drank alcohol, I smoked weed, I played video games, I ate junk food, all these things that give you that little dopamine hit and give you that sense of security. And this is where, again, it's just so important to understand that everyone's going to have a different coping mechanism. For me, alcohol wasn't the thing that I latched onto. It actually was problematic for me in college, and in some ways I abused it, but it wasn't the thing that stuck around. The thing that stuck around for me was porn and masturbation, fantasy. Sugar is also, one that goes back probably even further than pornography for me. And so it really isn't about the particular behavior. It's about your relationship with it. And so, for all the listeners out there to just recognize, you might have a thing with porn, you might not. You might instead have a thing with seeking external validation, or gambling, or shopping, or whatever it is for each of us individually.
Well, I imagine that an addiction to porn might be portrayed as less dangerous than an addiction to alcohol or drugs, and that it can't directly kill you. But how did it begin to impact your relationships and your well-being?
Yeah, well, it's one of the reasons that it can be even trickier to overcome is because it's so normalized in our society that many young boys and young men are getting this message that, hey, everybody does it. There's nothing wrong with it. It's harmless, all of these things. And we don't realize the actual effects that it's having on us. One of the issues with porn in that same thread is that a lot of the consequences are very subtle and they're hard to see and they develop over time. And it's just like little drops in the bucket that, one little bit of it won't kill you, but over a lifetime, it really can drain your life away, take out your life force and your life energy, and really negatively impact your intimate relationships, your relationships with other people and yourself. The turning point for me was when I noticed how it was affecting my relationships and what it was doing in terms of my views of women, my expectations of what their bodies should look like and what sex should be like, the ways that it was cultivating this lust, and I was really becoming a slave to my lust. I would get these tunnel vision. When I was aroused, I couldn't focus on anything else. All I could think about was porn, masturbation, fantasy. And the ways that I felt like a slave to my mind was one of the wake-up calls for me. I have a very clear moment in my life that was kind of a turning point for me, where I was walking down the street. I was maybe 24 at the time. And I just remember seeing these two young women walking in front of me, and I was just so filled with lust and desire. And it felt like this huge black hole opening up inside of me, where I realized, I was just, unless I could get that or have that or be with them, I wouldn't be happy. And it made me realize that it doesn't matter how successful I become in my life, how many things I accomplish. If I'm always controlled by this hunger for sexual pleasure, I'll always be miserable. And that I was actually strengthening that hunger by watching porn. And this was the insight into neuroplasticity that really changed my life, is understanding that what you frequently do with your thoughts, you're strengthening those neural pathways. And so I realized that every time I logged into porn, even though it might seem harmless, I was strengthening the neural pathways for lust and craving and dissatisfaction, because I'm always wanting something novel, something new. So there's a lot of the ways that it can impact your life. I could talk about some of the other ways it impacts men, but for me, that was the big turning moment.
Were you able to maintain any relationships, like a normal, in inverted commas, relationship during that time, or no?
To some extent. What would happen is I would be really attracted to someone. I would have a crush on them, and I would, go through the process of trying to approach them, get their number, whatever, maybe develop a relationship for a few days, a few weeks. But eventually what would happen is I would start to get bored, and I would think, oh, there's something wrong with her. I need to find something better. And what I realized is that was a direct replication of the way that I was viewing porn, which is you log on to your favorite site and you're scrolling through hundreds or thousands of videos looking for the perfect video. And nothing is ever quite good enough. You're always just looking for that perfect video to finish on, looking for slightly better. You're edging for, you could do it for hours. And I realized that I was starting to develop that kind of behavior with my partners. Like, it's not quite right. I want something just a little bit better, a little bit more. And this is the habituation that happens with addiction, is we end up getting habituated to that normal amount. And so we need more and more exciting, more novel, more taboo to get that same hit.
Yeah, it's exactly the same with alcohol, with becoming, suddenly you need 10 beers to get drunk or 20 beers to get drunk, and then you need vodka, and then you drink in the days rather than nights. It's very similar. There's also a couple of other things that you mentioned which sort of rung true with regards to sobriety, was you talked about, if we think that alcohol is normalized and it's difficult to identify whether or not you've developed a problem with it or become an addict, because we all have different ideas of what an addict is, porn is a whole different kettle of fish. I mean, it's almost expected that children, I don't know, I was 14 when I started. I'm sure many people are probably even younger than that. Sort of expected that everyone watches porn, and people watch porn all their lives. That's a normal thing to do. How do you figure out, okay, now I've got a problem. I'm not just a horny 15-year-old boy. I've actually developed an issue here.
Well, let me just backtrack a little bit on what you said, because it's even worse than that. Not only is it normalized, paradoxically, it is both normalized and also a taboo topic that nobody is allowed to talk about.
Yes.
And so it's this weird concoction. It's like the worst of both worlds, where everybody thinks it's normal, and yet you're not allowed to talk about it, and it's very embarrassing to talk about, and everyone kind of, you either joke about it or you just don't talk about it. So it's one of these things that people can't get support with. They can't open up about if they're struggling with it or how they feel about it. And if they do start to notice, hey, there, something doesn't feel right about this, society is telling them, no, this is normal. You're a man, you should watch porn. And what you're seeing on the front page of Pornhub is normal intimacy. And so the messages that young boys and young girls are getting, that these, fantasy things that they're seeing on their porn sites, that is a normal, healthy depiction of intimacy. It's frightening, like I can't imagine what it's like to be a teenager right now. Imagine having Pornhub in your pocket 24/7. Like at least in my age, we had to kind of hunt for it, and it was a little bit less accessible. But so going back to your question of how do you know if you have a problematic relationship with it? There's no hard and fast rule. It's not like, oh, if you watch 2.5 hours a day, then you're classified as an addict. You really have to do some self-awareness work and look at how it's affecting you. And this is where awareness and mindfulness are so important. You have to start to notice the ways that it's impacting your life. How is this impacting my energy levels? How is this impacting my views of women, of intimacy? How do I feel when I do it? Am I feeling shame? Am I watching stuff that I feel is out of alignment with my integrity and my values? So it really comes down to looking within and noticing the ways that it's impacting your life and your relationships. That being said, there are, a few things you can look at to see what your relationship is with it. And, so for example, if you are using it as a way to procrastinate, that's a good sign that you might have a problematic relationship with it. If you only do it when you're genuinely horny and you just do it because you're horny, and you don't do it to procrastinate, you're not doing it to escape your feelings, that's a good sign. But most people don't even know. Most people are not even aware of how they're using it. It's just so autopilot. Another thing you can look for is, how many tabs do you keep open? How many videos are you looking at? If you log on to a porn site and you find just kind of whatever video comes across your eyes and you watch it for 5 minutes and it's once a week, I might argue that it's not the biggest deal in the world. Of course, depending on your relationship, talking to your partner and having a conversation around what are your partner's views on it and is it okay for you to do. But if you're a single man, watching it once every few weeks for a couple minutes, that's a good sign. But if you are, getting down into these niches and it's getting more extreme, the kind of content that you're looking at is escalating, these are some signs to check it out.
That's an interesting idea. So it's not about the amount of porn you watch. It's not about the amount of alcohol that you drink. It's more about your relationship with the subject itself. Yeah.
At least this is my view. I mean, like if somebody comes to me and says, hey, I drink one glass of wine a month with a dinner when I'm out to my family, when I'm having steak, and that's the only time I drink alcohol, am I an alcoholic? I would say probably not. It sounds like you have a fine relationship with it. You could make an argument, hey, you might make an argument it's not improving your life, but maybe it is for that person. It doesn't, so much, at least in my book, addiction comes down to looking at what's the net outcome of this. Is it a net negative or a net positive? If something is bringing more good into your life than negatives, then, I would say keep doing it. But if on the net it's bringing in more negatives, that's when, for me, it becomes an addiction, when you keep doing it despite the negative consequences.
Of course. Jeremy, let's talk about shame, shall we? Because I feel like it's huge in all addictions, really, but I imagine it to be particularly big in porn addictions. I wonder if porn addiction is the only addiction that still holds quite as much shame for those in recovery as it does for those in the middle of it. Like we celebrate, he was an ex-addict and now he's sober. What an inspiration for everyone. But other than yourself, I don't hear many people being vocal about being ex-porn addicts. So there's still sniggers at the back of the room. There is still shame, I imagine. How do those going through this deal with the shame of it that seemingly never really ends, at least publicly?
Yeah, it's such a fascinating thing because for some reason, sex addiction and porn addiction, it has this kind of shame, that we feel about it more than anything else. Just as you say, like people are celebrated for being, recovered alcoholics, recovered narcotic addicts, so many of these things you can kind of proudly and vocally say that, I used to be a drug addict and now I'm recovered. But saying, hey, I used to be a sex addict, you feel ashamed of it and you don't want to say it because you're thinking, oh, people aren't going to want me around their kids, around their partners. Like people are going to worry about, am I a pervert or a creep? And so it is a really challenging thing. You know, shame is a huge issue in recovery from sex and porn addiction. And so it's one of the primary things that we need to do to help people overcome this is helping them overcome toxic shame. And there's a lot of work that's involved in that because it's one of the things that can keep people stuck in their addiction. It can keep people isolated because when you feel ashamed, you want to isolate. You know, you want to hide, you don't want to be seen, and it prevents you from actually getting support and doing the work and being vulnerable. And so one of the most healing things is being in community. You know, being in community with other men who are, you know, normalizing this kind of issue and saying, hey, you're not alone, you're not a monster, we're here for you, and we know what it's like.
I heard you identify the difference between healthy shame and toxic shame. Can you give us a little bit more information about those two?
Yeah, I love this topic because, you know, shame sometimes gets a bad rap in our society. Like, oh, you know, shame is so bad and we just have to let go of shame. And there's a flip side to that story, which is that shame is also a very healthy component of living a moral life. You know, and I'm not saying moral from a religious perspective. I'm saying moral from an ethical life. You know, it's like we need a component of shame. In Buddhism, like Buddhist philosophy, which, you know, I really have a deep respect for, they talk a lot about wholesome mind states. That's really what Buddhism is about. It's about cultivating wholesome mind states and letting go of unwholesome mind states, things that bring suffering. And all of the wholesome mind states are positive, meaning they feel good. You know, like love and compassion and patience and equanimity and contentment, they all feel good, these wholesome mind states. But there's two exceptions. There are two mind states that are wholesome, meaning they're skillful, they're good mind states, but they feel bad. They're like they feel unpleasant. And it's these two exceptions, they're called the two guardians of the world. And it's moral shame and moral dread. Meaning moral shame is like, oh, I did this unskillful thing and it kind of weighs on me. Like I feel bad about that. And then the moral dread is that feeling of if I do this unskillful thing, if I cause harm to this person or do something out of integrity, that's going to feel bad. And those two mind states, they feel unpleasant, but they're the guardians of the world. They're the things that protect us from causing harm to ourselves and other people. And so we need a little bit of that healthy shame, you know, the pro-social shame. Like if you do something bad, the thing that prevents you from doing it again is that moral dread, you know? And the thing that helps you learn from a mistake is that moral shame of like, oh, I did an unskillful thing and I feel the remorse of that action. We need more of that.
'Twas a cold winter's night, and without any heat, I wore Bombas socks so they'd warm up my feet. Yay, my feet cried, these socks are the best. So cushy and warm, I can finally rest. But don't rest, I said, there's more, if you please. Bombas also makes underwear, slippers, and tees. And for each thing you purchase, they donate one new to someone who needs it so they're cozy too. Everybody deserves to feel good all the time, so gift Bombas this season. That's the end of this rhyme. Go to bombas.com/audio and use code AUDIO for 20% off your first purchase.
Mint is still $15 a month for premium wireless. And if you haven't made the switch yet, here are 15 reasons why you should. 1, it's $15 a month. 2, seriously, it's $15 a month. 3, no big contrast. 4, I use it. 5, my mom uses it. Are you playing me off? That's what's happening, right? Okay, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, $15 per month equivalent required. New customer offer first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
That in the world.
You said you had a healthy respect for Buddhism. You've slightly underplayed it there, Jeremy. Part of your recovery was that you moved to Myanmar, people also call it Burma, and you became a Buddhist monk, which is an unusual thing to do. So I guess I do want to dive into that, but to sort of backtrack from that, you know, you've identified you've got a problem with porn. There are not the resources readily available to those that are trying to give up booze or drugs. So what steps did you take to sort of get well that ended up with you becoming a Buddhist monk in Myanmar?
Yeah, a big part of my recovery was understanding that my addiction was my mind being out of control. I was a slave to my mind, and I was not in control. My desires were in control, my cravings were in control, and it was causing me to do things, that were leading me to suffering. And so fundamentally, what I realized is that if I want to overcome this addiction, I have to understand the dynamics of my mind. I have to understand how my mind is working and the ways that craving is arising and the ways that lust is arriving, and how I can actually work with that and learn to master what's going on in my mind. And that, coupled with understanding what we now know as neuroplasticity, understanding that you can actually rewire your mind, you can actually form new neural pathways. And this is really what the art of meditation is you're cultivating particular neural pathways, particular qualities of mind. And so for me, I just had this real awakening of understanding how important things like mindfulness and meditation were from a very secular point of view. I mean, my background is in genetics. I've never been a religious person. So like my interest in Buddhism is not from a religious, like reincarnation kind of perspective. It's from how can I train my mind to be my best friend? How can I train my mind to do skillful things in the world and to not be just a slave to desire?
So how long were you practicing and living out in Myanmar for?
Well, yeah, it's interesting. So my time as a monk in Myanmar came way later. What I started doing is I went to India first, and I started doing these meditation retreats. You might have heard of a Vipassana retreat. So I started doing these silent meditation retreats. They're typically 10 days long. You're not reading or writing or talking or making eye contact with the other participants. You're really being in your own experience, and you're learning how to cultivate wholesome mind states. You're learning how to cultivate contentment in the present moment, how to practice acceptance, how to focus your concentration, all these things. And those became really transformative for me. So I started doing those around a little more than once a year. So maybe once every 7 or 8 months, I would go on one of these extended retreats, and did that for about a decade. Many years I would go on these retreats and just really getting into meditation, just as a normal lay person, not as a monk.
So this is in your 20s, into your 30s?
Yeah. In my mid-20s is when I started. And then somewhere along the line, the retreats, I started doing longer retreats, and I had the opportunity to do a month-long retreat in Myanmar, in Burma. And so I signed up for this month-long silent retreat. And at that retreat, which was at a monastery in Burma, in Myanmar, you had the opportunity to ordain as a monk. So in Myanmar, you can do a temporary ordination, which it's almost like a rite of passage for men in Myanmar to do a temporary ordination. And so I took the opportunity, to live as a monk for a month. So for me, it wasn't like, as a monk for many years in Myanmar. It was like an experience that I was grateful for, but I was well along my recovery and well along my path. So it's less about becoming a monk. For people out there listening who want to overcome their addiction, you don't have to be a monk. The important thing is to learn how to practice mindfulness, how to really be aware of your emotions, because so much of addiction, what it really comes down to is trying to escape unpleasant emotions, loneliness, boredom, self-judgment, fear. We experience some emotion and we think, I don't want to feel this way. Let me numb out in some way. Let me log on to TikTok and zone out. Let me grab a bottle of alcohol. Let me go to whatever it is that we do to escape unpleasant emotions. And so a lot of recovery has to be with learning how to actually be with what's difficult without running away from it. Like when sadness is there, if you can just be like, oh wow, I'm really sad. And that's okay. I don't need to run from this feeling. I can just be with my sadness. Then you don't need to escape anything. And that's liberating. That's why it's like, it's not about the porn, it's not about the alcohol. It's like, it's all the same. It's just, can you be the type of person that doesn't have to run away and escape unpleasant things.
I've been trying to say that for about a year, but you've worded it far better than I ever could. I'm always like, feel the feelings and like, just don't feel like you need to be dissatisfied with the way you're feeling and take something or do something to change it. But you've done it far better than me. Every now and then I feel like an article or a podcast or a story will come into our lives and dramatically alter the way that we feel about something. Particularly if people are struggling with addiction, I feel like often we're on the lookout for something save me, something come into my life and inspire me. I'd like to talk to you briefly about the impact that the book Happiness, A Guide to Developing Life's Most Important Skill by Mathieu Ricard had on you.
Where should we start? I mean,
this could be the rest of the podcast.
Yeah, that book. So, I mentioned this moment when I was walking down the street in my early 20s, and I had this, for me, it really felt like an existential crisis. Like I remember seeing these really attractive women in front of me. I remember feeling that lust arise and that feeling of, oh, I need sex. I need to go touch them, whatever it was, just that feeling. And it made me realize something very important, which is, in that period of my life, everything was amazing. I was a top student in a great university in California. I had a lot of friends. I was captain and president of the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Sports Club, like athletic, friends, happy life. The sun was shining. I was good academically. Like my whole life was amazing. Everything that I put my mind to, I accomplished. I was a very high achieving person. And I remember in that moment when I saw these girls that I was attracted to, I felt like I had nothing. And what it made me realize is like, it doesn't matter what you accomplish or what you achieve. If you're always looking at what you want, if you're always craving for what you don't have, you're in a state of suffering. And that craving itself is the state of suffering. And it kind of freaked me out because I started having these thoughts of like, will I ever be happy? If I keep doing all these things, but it's not bringing me happiness, what is happiness? And so that sent me, down a little bit of a dark spiral, but fortunately that dark spiral landed me in a bookstore. And I ended up looking at books on positive psychology and the study of happiness. And I realized people were actually studying happiness. They were studying, this is the field of positive psychology. And so I started reading up a little bit on positive psychology, and that led me to this book, Happiness by Mathieu Ricard. And that book was so transformative for me because Mathieu Ricard has a background in science, and yet he became a Buddhist monk and was able to blend these two disciplines of, a secular, rational approach to well-being and happiness. And what that book showed me is that happiness is a skill that you can cultivate. It comes from the way you relate to what you have. It doesn't come from what you have. And that you can actually strengthen those mental qualities that directly lead to happiness. So for example, gratitude, contentment, loving kindness, and compassion. These are things that make you feel fulfilled and happy. And you can actually strengthen those muscles through meditation. So that, that book really laid out for me like what happiness is and what it's not. One of the biggest insights I had is that pleasure is not the same as happiness. Feeling good does not make you happy. Mm-hmm. Feeling good can be its own form of suffering when you are chasing after it nonstop. When you feel, oh, I need to feel good, that can be its own source of suffering. And we see this with rich billionaires and celebrities who have all the material wealth in the world, and yet they're depressed and suicidal. It's like, we know these things don't make us happy. Mm-hmm. And yet our society sells it. It says, if you have this watch, if you have this new gadget, if you have this type of girlfriend, then, you'll be happy. And it just doesn't work.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I also love the fact that, you overcame your addiction and that wasn't enough. Now you spend a lot of your life working with others to help them get over their issues of their own. What similarities have you seen in all of those that you have worked with? Are there sort of telltale signs that come up over and over that you try and solve? Have you got a formula of like, typically if you do X, Y, Z, you will be better? Or is it never annoyingly as simple as that?
It's a great question. It's not a simple thing, and that it is a simple thing in the sense of, have you heard of the rat park experiment?
No.
Okay, it's one of my favorite little vignettes of addiction recovery. So they were studying the effect of addiction back in the 70s or something, and they were using rats as a test subject, and they were studying morphine laced water. So they would give these rats water laced with morphine. And what they found is that the rats got so addicted that they would sit there and drink the morphine water until they died. They were just so addicted, they would forget to eat, forget to exercise, and they would just literally die from being so addicted to this water. And it was showing how strong addiction could be and how devastating it could be. And then this one researcher had a really interesting insight. He said, well, these rats, they're living in these cages, it's miserable, they don't have any friends. What if we give them a more natural environment? So they tested this. They forced them to get addicted to the morphine water. So they made them addicted, and then they put them in what they call the rat park, which is that they had other friends, they had exercise wheels, they had greenery to run around in. And what they found is that the rats barely touched the water, that they weren't addicted, even though they were forced to be addicted first. Once they were put in that healthy environment, the addiction didn't have anything to sink its teeth into. And what this shows us is that recovery from addiction, it's about creating a fulfilling life, a life that you don't need to escape from. If you can create a life that is deeply fulfilling, where you are emotionally stable, you're surrounded by loved ones, you feel you have your needs met, you're exercising, you're eating well, addiction can't sink its teeth into you. And so part of recovery is stopping doing the thing, but the other important part is actually creating a life that you don't need to escape from.
Mm.
And so you have to look at your life and say, okay, am I exercising? Am I having enough social interactions with good friends? Am I connected to some kind of meaning and purpose? Am I being of service to my community? Like, these are human needs that we have. Am I growing? Am I challenging myself? Like, we need these things. And if we don't have these things, that's when we're susceptible to addiction, whether it's porn or junk food or Netflix or anything else.
Yeah, that's a lovely example, isn't it? I've heard people speak in the past about the difference between getting sober and being sober. Getting sober is giving up the thing. Being sober is exactly what you've described, filling your life with fulfilling things that give you joy, have a network. I always say to people, the importance of that network, whether or not you buy into AA or buy into churches or whatever, what they give you is a support network of like-minded people, which is so important. I think a lot of people, I'm sure the same with porn addiction, is you lock yourself away. You're like, okay, the way that I get well is I lock myself in a room and I don't go out, and that way I don't have the temptations of, alcohol. I guess locking yourself in a room, you do have the temptation of porn.
Exactly. It's the worst thing you can do.
It's the worst. But yeah, isolation, it's such a huge thing within all forms of addiction. I feel like it's the cause and can be the biggest issue within even the recovery part.
Well, and it's one of the reasons that porn addiction really is so vicious, is that it's one of the addictions that breeds itself in isolation. When you lock yourself in a room, when you go to a hotel in a foreign city, it's like that's when you're most susceptible to porn, because it's something that people typically do in isolation. It's not something you do with other people.
How do you see and understand porn today?
It's a great question. For me personally, it's something that it will never really benefit my life. I don't have a very hard stance of like, oh, this is evil and nobody should watch it. If somebody wants to come and say, hey, it benefits my life, I might be a little bit, what's the word? Not cynical and not suspicious, skeptical. I might be a little skeptical of like, hey, are you really aware of how it's impacting your relationships? Are you aware of how it's impacting your energy levels and your views on intimacy? But if somebody firmly believes that, then I say go for it. Of course, there's a whole argument we can have around the connection between porn industry and sex trafficking and the mistreatment of the actors and all of these things. Like there's the whole ethical conversation. But in principle, I don't have anything against it. But I do think that it's so much more harmful than most people realize on very subtle levels that you kind of do have to have a pretty high level of awareness to see all the subtle ways that it's impacting you. There's the really obvious ways of like if you're cheating on your partner with it, if you are spending money on subscription sites, if you are wasting your time and energy when you should be doing work. But all the subtle ways it can impact your relationship with yourself, your self-image, your relationship with your partner, your views on intimacy, all these things. So for me, I see it as something that's overall harmful. But I also know it's different for men and women. I think this is a discussion that we should have is that it's not the same experience for men as it is for women. And I think there are more examples and more coming out that for women, it can actually be beneficial in some ways. Not to say that women can't get addicted or can't experience negative consequences, but you hear more stories from women about how it supports them, that maybe it opens up their sexuality in ways that's beneficial. But for men, I can't really think of any situation or scenario where it really benefits a man to be doing on his own.
How do our listeners find you, Jeremy? How can we access your courses and your lessons, your podcast? Tell us a little about it all.
Yeah, I would say the podcast is the best way. It's the Unhooked podcast. You can find it on all the streaming platforms. I'm on Instagram at Jeremy Lipkowitz. I have some courses. I have a community of men. So if you're interested in getting support, you can join the community. You can work with me one-on-one. You can find that on my website, jeremylipkowitz.com.
And specifically, you're not just helping people with porn addiction. It's all forms of addiction. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, if somebody wants to work with me, because it really is the same on a fundamental level. So if somebody wants to work with me, my one-on-one coaching is really holistic. So it's, I have people who come for all kinds of things. The community, the Unhooked community, really is more specifically for porn or sex addiction or compulsive use of those kind of things. We have people in the group who are there for other reasons, but just to know that is kind of the focus of the community.
Great. I feel like I could talk to you all day, Jeremy, to be honest. Thank you so much for being on Sober Awkward. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on.
It's been a pleasure for me as well.
If you're questioning your relationship with booze, you're struggling to moderate, or your hangovers are causing anxiety, it might be time to reach out for some support.
Yeah, just talk to a mate about how you're feeling, contact a local doctor, find an AA or sobriety group. Vic's got one.
Yeah, just head to www.cuppa.community.
Remember, if you're questioning yourself, it might be time to seek support.
Even though this journey can be awkward, it is definitely worth it. And if you've enjoyed the Sober Awkward podcast, don't forget to review it, rate it, and share it with your mates.
They have to share it with their mates?
Yeah, of course they do. I'm not doing this for nothing, Hamish. Bloody hell.
How do they share it?
I don't know, just write it on the document.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
Look, love it or hate it, the advertising and marketing industry is the ultimate broker of power and influence in the world today. And now you can look behind the curtain. I'm Ryan Joe, editor-in-chief of Adweek and host of our new weekly podcast, AdSpeak. AdSpeak brings stories from our top reporters to life and delves into the people and companies that shape the products we buy, the entertainment we enjoy, and how we view the world. We're bringing the drama of the newsroom directly to you and revealing the untold stories behind the headline. AdSpeak by Adweek is your new essential weekly podcast. Subscribe and follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
So, as you probably know, my comedy memoir, 1,000 Wasted Sundays, is officially out. All my magnificent fuck-uppery in one awkward hit. If you'd like to get your hands on a copy, it's now available from all good bookstores.
We always say all good bookstores, don't we?
Yeah.
Are there bad
No, it's
bookstores?
probably ones with moody sellers.
Oh yeah, really
Yeah.
depressed librarian folk.
Yes,
Okay,
yeah. So there are probably some, but we're only storing it in the good ones.
It's only made it into the goodies.
You can also get it from all good online retailers. The print version and ebook are out now, and the audiobook will be available in March. I've been writing my memoir for 5 years. It will make you laugh, cry and cringe, and hopefully inspire a few people to reconsider their relationship with booze. If you love the podcast, then I think you'll love the book, even if I do say so myself. Hamish has read it. What did you think?
I feel like I know a little bit too much about you now, to be honest, Vic. Look, I really loved it. It was hilarious and surprisingly moving, but I feel like I've seen you naked in a literary sense.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's worrying.
Yeah. From an emotional point of view, seriously, it wobbled my teeny weeny wooden heart, Vic.
Okay.
My teeny little wooden heart.
Well, his wooden heart is broken. Anyway, so if you do manage to get your filthy mitts on a copy, please do me a favour and head to goodreads.com and give me a review. Doing that will help me get it out there to those that need a bit of sober support. So there you have it. My story, unwanted warts and all. Come and get awkward with me.
Not to be too demanding or anything, but seriously, go and buy it
Yeah,
now.
go and buy it right now.
Yeah, don't just tell your friends, buy it, and then buy your friends one or two.
Yeah, don't give them a copy, buy it. Yeah,
And you know what? Don't be careful where you store it. If you lose it, you can always buy another 5.
buy another one.
Yeah.